Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. You didn't become guarded because you're cold. You became guarded because you had to grow up too fast. You became strong at a very young age, not because you were naturally resilient, but because life demanded it of you. You learned quickly that showing your feelings came with a price. Perhaps a tear was met with dismissal, or a cry for help was ignored. Maybe saying what you truly felt made someone uncomfortable, or worse, made you feel unsafe. So little by little, you built walls. Not out of choice, but out of necessity. What started as a protective shield eventually became part of who you are. It felt like strength, and in some ways it was. But it also carried a quiet cost that often goes unnoticed. Even now, years later, you might find yourself stiffening when someone gets too close, or turning away from intimacy without even realizing it. You might call it independence, or simply how you are. But deep down, it's the same armor that protected you when you were vulnerable and unprepared. That armor once saved you from hurt, but now it can feel heavy, isolating, and lonely. You may crave connection, yet instinctively push it away. You may long to be seen, yet shrink when someone truly looks. It's important to recognize that what kept you safe then doesn't have to define you now. The first step toward freedom is noticing that your armor is there and understanding why it was necessary. It's not a flaw, it's a testament to your survival, and sometimes simply acknowledging that can be revolutionary. What saved you then may be costing you now. Begin small. Pay attention to one moment today when you instinctively protect yourself. Name it silently, feel it fully, and remind yourself that you don't have to hide to be safe anymore. You can honor who you were without letting that old survival strategy control who you are today. You may not even realize how heavy your emotional armor has become. At first, it felt necessary, it felt protective, it felt like a lifeline. In a world that sometimes seemed too big, too harsh, too unpredictable. But over time, what once kept you safe has begun to shape the way you move through life. You notice that you avoid certain conversations, certain people, or even certain feelings, not because they are unsafe now, but because your armor has trained you to stay guarded. It whispers that vulnerability is dangerous, that asking for help is weakness, that showing your true self will only invite judgment or disappointment. And so you carry this weight silently. Perhaps no one notices. Perhaps you tell yourself that it's just who you are, or that this is the way strong people navigate the world. But underneath, there's a quiet cost. You may feel distant from others, even those closest to you. You might laugh at jokes or nod along in conversations, but a part of you remains elsewhere, somewhere unreachable, tucked safely behind the walls you've built. You crave connection, yet instinctively shrink from it. You long to be understood, yet you fear being truly seen. The irony is that your armor, meant to protect you, is also preventing the very experiences you most desire. The cost of staying armored is not always dramatic or obvious. It doesn't always manifest in a single traumatic moment. More often, it shows up subtly in the hesitation to speak your truth, in the hesitation to lean on someone for support, in the habit of keeping your feelings to yourself. You may avoid conflict at all costs, not because you don't care, but because you've learned that being open often comes with pain. You may find it difficult to fully relax, even in safe spaces, because your body and mind have been conditioned to remain vigilant. You are carrying the echoes of old fears, old disappointments, old experiences of being hurt when you least expected it. Sometimes you feel like you are living life in fragments. There is the part of you that wants to laugh loudly, to share your joy freely, to celebrate successes without self-consciousness. But there is also the part that holds back, constantly scanning the environment for danger, for judgment, for rejection. That part whispers that it is safer to remain silent, to keep feelings contained, to avoid being vulnerable. And so even in moments of happiness, there is a tension, a subtle restraint, a quiet hesitancy. Life becomes a delicate dance between the person you long to be and the person you believe you must be to survive. You may have built your armor as a response to specific experiences, childhood lessons, moments of criticism, or times when your feelings were dismissed or minimized. Perhaps you were told to be strong, to stop crying, to handle things on your own. Maybe the people around you are themselves armored, unable to model vulnerability or emotional honesty. Or perhaps you learned early that expressing your emotions made you a target for ridicule or disappointment. Whatever the origin, the armor was functional. It served its purpose, but now it has become a habit, a default state, a lens through which you see the world. The challenge is that armor, once forged, rarely comes off without conscious effort. It can feel like a part of your identity. You may wonder who you are without it. You may fear that letting your guard down will leave you exposed, unprotected, or weak, and yet the very act of holding up these defenses day after day slowly chips away at your sense of freedom, your ability to connect deeply, and your capacity to experience life fully. The more you rely on it, the more distant you become from the people, experiences, and feelings that could nourish your soul. It's also worth noticing that emotional armor affects more than just your relationships with others. It shapes your relationship with yourself. You may have become skilled at pushing down emotions you label as unproductive or dangerous, but in doing so, you risk disconnecting from your own truth. You may struggle to name what you feel in certain moments or dismiss your own needs as secondary. The armor whispers that self-protection is paramount, but in prioritizing safety above all else, you may unknowingly deprive yourself of joy, fulfillment, and even self-compassion. The irony is that this armor, which was once necessary to survive, now keeps you from thriving. You may find yourself envying those who seem open, connected, and authentic. You may wonder how they manage to live with such ease, laughter, and trust. The truth is, they have learned, often through trial and error, that vulnerability is not weakness. They have discovered that opening themselves up to risk, to honesty, to connection can lead to deeper bonds and a richer experience of life. Meanwhile, your armor, though protective, has kept you from taking these same risks, keeping certain parts of yourself in a state of permanent seclusion. Breaking through this armor doesn't happen all at once. It isn't about tearing down walls in a dramatic act of bravery. It is about noticing the armor, naming it, and understanding it with compassion. It is about realizing that the mechanisms that once saved you are no longer serving you in the same way. You begin by identifying a single situation where you instinctively hold back, and you allow yourself gently to respond differently. Perhaps you share a small truth with a trusted friend. Perhaps you express a feeling you would normally conceal. Perhaps you simply notice your guarded posture, your restrained words, or your inner tension, and you offer yourself acknowledgement rather than judgment. This process requires patience and self-kindness. You may stumble, you may feel exposed, you may worry about the consequences, and yet each small act of awareness, each gentle loosening of your armor is a victory. Each moment in which you allow yourself to be seen, even in a small way, chips away at the distance you've maintained between yourself and others, and between yourself and your own feelings. Over time, these small moments accumulate, teaching you that connection, authenticity, and openness are not as dangerous as you once believed. It is also important to remember that your armor is not a mistake nor a flaw. It is a testament to your resilience, your adaptability, and your courage in the face of early challenges. What you built was meant to protect you, and for that, it deserves acknowledgement and respect. But it is equally important to recognize that survival strategies, no matter how effective at one time, can become restrictive over time. To grow, to heal, and to experience life fully, you must learn to approach your armor not with fear or shame, but with curiosity and compassion. Start with simple, tangible steps. Notice a situation where you instinctively retreat or protect yourself. Reflect quietly, is this my old survival strategy acting or my present self responding? Allow yourself to feel your emotions fully, even if it is uncomfortable. Take one action that leans toward openness, whether it is sharing a feeling, asking for support, or simply observing your internal resistance. Each act, no matter how small, builds a bridge between the person you have been and the person you are becoming. In time, you may discover that the world is not as threatening as your armor once believed it to be. You may notice that people can respond to your vulnerability with empathy, kindness, and understanding. You may begin to experience intimacy, joy, and freedom in ways that were previously unavailable. The heavy weight you carried for so long begins to feel lighter, not because the world has changed, but because you have learned that you do not need armor to be safe, worthy, or loved. Armor keeps you safe, but never held. This is not a condemnation. It is an invitation to notice, to reflect, to gently let go, to discover that the part of you that built these defenses also carries within it a deep capacity for connection, love, and authenticity, to realize that the very qualities you were taught to hide, the sensitivity, the openness, the tenderness, are not weaknesses, but gateways to a fuller, richer, more courageous life. Vulnerability often feels like a risk too great to take, especially when you've spent so much of your life armored and alert. It can feel as though opening yourself up, even in small ways, might undo the safety you've worked so hard to create. And yet, beneath that fear is a quiet truth. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the clearest form of courage you can practice. It is the willingness to show up, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the possibility of hurt looms nearby. It is saying to yourself, I am willing to be seen as I am, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels risky, even if I might be judged. You might recoil at the idea of being vulnerable because you remember the consequences of being open in the past. Perhaps honesty was met with criticism. Perhaps trust was broken, or perhaps your emotions were dismissed or ridiculed. That is why your armor formed in the first place. It was a shield against being hurt, against rejection, against the fear that your feelings did not matter. Vulnerability is different because it asks you to confront those memories and take a risk anyway, not recklessly, but with intention and awareness. It is choosing connection over isolation, authenticity over protection, and courage over comfort. To practice vulnerability, you must first notice where your armor is still active. Pay attention to the moments you hold back, when you soften your words to avoid conflict, when you smile instead of expressing frustration, when you laugh instead of admitting sadness. These are the places where your protective self is still at work. And that's okay. Acknowledging it is not a failure, it is awareness. Awareness is the doorway to choice. Once you notice it, you can make a deliberate decision to act differently, even in the smallest ways. Vulnerability is not about exposing everything to everyone at once. It is not a reckless abandonment of all defenses. It is measured, intentional, and brave. It is choosing to speak your truth, to ask for what you need, to allow others to see your humanity without hiding behind pretense. It is sitting with discomfort, uncertainty, and fear while refusing to let them dictate your actions. When you embrace vulnerability, you give yourself permission to exist fully, with your emotions intact, without pretending to be invulnerable or detached. The inner struggle of vulnerability is real. Fear, shame, and self-doubt often rise up like waves, threatening to pull you back into the safety of your armor. You may worry that others will reject you, judge you, or take advantage of your openness. You may doubt your worthiness of being seen or loved. You may question whether it is safe to trust your instincts, to share your feelings, to reveal your inner thoughts. These fears are normal. They are part of the process. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means leaning into it anyway, step by step, with intention and care. Practicing vulnerability begins with small, deliberate acts. It might be sharing a feeling you normally keep to yourself with someone you trust. It might be admitting that you need help or that you are struggling. It might be asking for clarity in a conversation instead of assuming or withdrawing. Each act is a rehearsal for the deeper, more transformative vulnerability that comes with time. Each step proves to yourself that you can survive being seen, that connection is possible, and that your feelings are valid. One of the most profound realizations of embracing vulnerability is that it strengthens you rather than weakens you. When you risk being open, you also risk being understood, supported, and loved in ways you may have never imagined. You discover that people can respond with empathy and care, that trust can grow, and that intimacy is not a threat, but a possibility. Vulnerability allows life to move through you instead of around you. It is not about being reckless with your heart. It is about learning to hold it gently while letting it breathe, expanding the space for real human connection. The courage to be vulnerable also reshapes how you see yourself. When you allow yourself to be seen, even in small ways, you begin to recognize your inherent worthiness. You learn that you are enough, not because you have armor or perfection, but because you are willing to show up as your whole, authentic self. This understanding transforms how you engage with the world. You speak with clarity, you act with integrity, and you form bonds that are rooted in truth rather than pretense. Vulnerability can also illuminate the areas of your life where growth is possible. When you allow yourself to feel deeply and express honestly, you gain insight into your desires, fears, and patterns. You recognize the moments where old survival strategies no longer serve you. You see the places where you're holding back unnecessarily. And in that seeing, there is liberation. You discover that courage is not a single act, but a continuous practice, showing up, feeling deeply, and choosing connection even when it is uncomfortable. It is crucial to remember that vulnerability is not an all or nothing proposition. You do not need to dismantle your defenses completely or expose every corner of your heart at once. True courage is in the measured, thoughtful acts of authenticity that expand your capacity for connection and resilience. Begin with one small step today. Speak your truth in a minor situation, share a feeling you normally suppress, or simply notice the moment you pull back and silently invite yourself to lean in. Over time, these small gestures accumulate into profound change, creating a life where you are fully engaged, fully felt, and fully human. Bravery starts when you stop pretending you're unaffected. This is not a call to recklessness, but an invitation to presence. To live with your heart engaged, your voice heard, and your feelings honored. Vulnerability is not about exposure to harm. It is about embracing the full spectrum of your humanity. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that have been silenced, hidden, or protected for too long. It is the ultimate act of courage because it requires trusting yourself, trusting others, and trusting life itself. When you practice vulnerability, you begin to rewrite the story you have been living. You recognize that fear no longer has to dictate your choices, that emotional safety is possible without constant armor, and that you can connect without losing yourself. You learn that your feelings are valid, that your voice matters, and that your presence can be fully experienced and appreciated. Each act of vulnerability is a brick in the foundation of a more authentic, joyful, and courageous life. Over time, you discover that the armor you built so early, while once necessary, is no longer the only path to safety. Vulnerability, courage, and authenticity create a new form of protection, a shield not built from fear or isolation, but from connection, awareness, and compassion. And in that space, you find freedom, you find strength, you find the capacity to live fully, love deeply, and engage with life in a way that your younger self could only have dreamed of. Change often feels impossible, especially when the patterns that have guided your life for decades have become so familiar that they feel like part of who you are. You've lived with the armor for so long that it feels inseparable from your identity. It whispers to you that it is necessary, that it keeps you safe, that without it, life will feel uncertain, overwhelming, or even dangerous. And for many years, it was true. The armor protected you when you needed it most, offering comfort in chaos, stability and unpredictability, and a sense of control when the world felt out of your hands. But the very thing that once safeguarded you can now limit your growth, your joy, and your ability to connect with others authentically. Recognizing the need for change is the first step, and yet it is rarely simple. There is a tension between the old self, the one who survived through defense, caution, and restraint, and the new self, the one longing for openness, freedom, and connection. That tension can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. It can bring up doubt. What if I let go too soon? What if I'm too vulnerable? What if the world really is as harsh as I've believed it to be? These questions are natural. They are part of the process of unlearning patterns that once served you. Change is not about abandoning who you were. It is about allowing yourself to evolve into who you are meant to become. The armor you built early in life became a filter through which you experienced the world. It shaped how you interacted with people, how you made decisions, and even how you felt about yourself. Perhaps it kept you from asking for help or from fully expressing your emotions. Perhaps it made you overly cautious, withdrawn, or hyper-aware of potential judgment. These patterns became habits, and habits, once ingrained, are difficult to shift. Change requires not only awareness, but also intentionality, patience, and compassion for yourself as you navigate uncharted territory. One of the most challenging aspects of change is confronting fear. Fear often disguises itself as logic, reason, or self-protection. It whispers that stepping out of your old patterns is reckless, that old wounds may reopen, or that vulnerability will lead to pain, and yet fear is rarely a signal that you should stop. More often, it is a sign that something significant is possible, an invitation to step into growth, courage, and authenticity. It is in these moments when fear is strongest that change has the potential to be most transformative. Leaning into fear rather than fleeing from it is an act of bravery that reshapes both your inner world and your external life. Rewriting old patterns begins with small, deliberate acts. It might start with noticing your habitual responses, the moments when you instinctively pull back, when you deflect, when you hide your feelings. Awareness alone does not equal change, but it is the foundation. Once you can see the armor, you can begin to loosen it, piece by piece. You might try responding differently in a situation that normally triggers caution. Speaking up instead of withdrawing, expressing a feeling instead of suppressing it, or inviting connection instead of maintaining distance. Each small action is a rehearsal for new ways of being, a practice in dismantling old survival strategies and replacing them with intentional, life-giving habits. Change also involves reframing your internal narrative. For years, you may have believed that your survival strategies were all you had. You may have told yourself that protecting yourself was the only way to avoid disappointment, rejection, or hurt. And in many ways, that belief was true. But life has shifted and your circumstances have evolved. You are no longer in the same environment that demanded constant vigilance. The people, situations, and experiences that once required armor may no longer be present, and yet your patterns persist. Rewriting the story means acknowledging that while the past shaped you, it does not define your present or limit your future. It means asking yourself, what do I need now, not then? Another aspect of change is compassion for yourself and for your past. The armor you built was not a mistake. It was a testament to your resilience, your creativity, and your ability to survive challenges that were beyond your control. Honoring that part of yourself is essential because shame or self-criticism only reinforce old patterns. By treating your past self with empathy, you create space for growth. You begin to understand that vulnerability, openness, and connection are not betrayals of your survival strategies. They are the natural evolution of them. You are not discarding your armor. You are learning when to wear it, when to loosen it, and when to set it aside entirely. True change requires courage. It is easy to desire transformation in theory, but much harder to enact it in daily life. The process involves experimenting with new behaviors, tolerating discomfort, and allowing yourself to be imperfect along the way. You will stumble, you will hesitate, and at times you may feel like retreating into old habits. And yet every act of intentional change, no matter how small, is a victory. Every time you choose openness over defense, connection over isolation, authenticity over performance, you reinforce the truth that your armor is no longer the only path to safety. Change also opens the door to growth in unexpected ways. When you begin to loosen the walls that have kept you safe but distant, you create space for deeper relationships, richer experiences, and a fuller sense of self. You may discover talents, emotions, and capacities that have been dormant beneath layers of protection. You may find that people respond with empathy, understanding, and care, contrary to the warnings of your old fears. You may experience intimacy and connection in ways that once seemed impossible. Each act of rewriting old patterns is an invitation to step more fully into life, to be present with your own feelings and the feelings of others, and to embrace the vulnerability that brings depth and richness to your existence. It is important to remember that change is a gradual process. You do not transform overnight. You do not suddenly discard all defenses or become entirely open and fearless. Transformation is a series of small intentional steps, moments of awareness, choices to act differently, reflections on your patterns, and exercises in self-compassion. These cumulative actions create a ripple effect, gradually reshaping the way you experience yourself and the world around you. Over time, what once felt unfamiliar, risky, or uncomfortable becomes natural, habitual, and life-affirming. You can honor who you were without staying who you had to be. This simple truth encapsulates the essence of change. You do not erase your history, deny your survival, or reject your past strategies. Instead, you integrate them into a new narrative, one where you are free to respond with courage, openness, and authenticity. You reclaim choice. You reclaim freedom. You reclaim the ability to move through life without the weight of unnecessary protection. Begin with small steps. Notice the moments you instinctively retreat or defend yourself and experiment with a different response. Reflect on the old story you have been living and consider what it would mean to rewrite it. Offer yourself compassion for the challenges you faced and the armor you built to survive. Allow yourself to take one courageous action each day, no matter how minor it may seem. In doing so, you gradually teach yourself that you can survive, thrive, and connect without being trapped behind walls. As you continue this process, you will notice a shift. The world will feel less threatening, your relationships will feel more authentic, and your connection to yourself will deepen. The armor that once seemed indispensable will no longer control your life. You will find freedom not in abandoning your past, but in understanding it, honoring it, and choosing to respond differently moving forward. This is the essence of transformation. Gentle, intentional, courageous, and profoundly liberating. Living with an open, braver heart is the culmination of every step you have taken toward awareness, vulnerability, and change. It is the point at which the lessons of your past armor, the insights from your fears, and the courage to be vulnerable all converge into a new way of existing in the world. This stage is not about perfection, nor is it about removing all defenses at once. It is about learning to hold your heart in a way that allows you to experience life fully without the constant burden of guarding yourself. It is about discovering that you can be soft and strong at the same time, that you can care deeply without being consumed, that you can show up fully without losing yourself. You may still feel moments of hesitation or fear. Old habits die slowly, and the armor you built so early still whispers warnings when life feels uncertain. There may be times when you pull back instinctively, when the instinct to protect yourself feels stronger than the desire to connect. And that is natural. Growth does not erase fear. It teaches you how to act despite it. It teaches you that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward in spite of it. Each time you choose connection, each time you allow yourself to be seen, each time you respond from openness rather than defense, you reinforce the truth that your heart is capable of resilience, depth, and joy. Living with an open heart also requires discernment. It does not mean exposing yourself to harm or abandoning boundaries. True strength is flexible, not rigid. It is the ability to recognize when a situation or a person is safe and worthy of trust, and when distance is necessary. It is the balance between giving and protecting, between being present and preserving your well-being. Learning to navigate this balance is one of the most profound acts of courage you can practice. It allows you to engage fully with the world while maintaining your sense of self, creating a life that is both authentic and sustainable. When you live with an open heart, you begin to experience life in a more vibrant and expansive way. You notice the small moments of connection, the warmth of a friend's understanding glance, the quiet joy of a shared laugh, the comfort of being fully seen without explanation or apology. You allow yourself to celebrate your victories, no matter how small, and to grieve your losses with tenderness. You acknowledge your emotions, both the joy and the pain, and you honor them as essential parts of your human experience. Your heart, once hidden behind layers of protection, becomes a conduit for richness, intimacy, and meaning. This stage of growth also transforms your relationship with yourself. You begin to recognize your worthiness, not because you have proven yourself or avoided harm, but simply because you exist. You learn that self-compassion is not indulgence, it is survival, renewal, and empowerment. You stop measuring your value against external standards or past mistakes. Instead, you honor your journey, your courage, and your capacity to learn and evolve. Each act of openness, each moment of honesty, each choice to respond from love rather than fear reinforces your sense of self as whole, resilient, and capable. Living with an open heart encourages deeper, more authentic relationships with others. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you create space for others to do the same. The walls that once separated you from connection gradually dissolve, replaced by bridges of understanding, empathy, and trust. You discover that relationships built on honesty and presence are far more nourishing than those maintained by pretense or defense. You learn that being seen is not dangerous but liberating, and that intimacy is not a threat but a profound form of connection. The inner struggle at this stage is subtle but persistent. Old fears of rejection, failure, or being misunderstood may linger. You may occasionally question whether it is safe to show your true self or worry that being open will leave you vulnerable to hurt. These doubts are natural. They are reminders that growth is ongoing and that courage is not a one-time act but a continuous practice. The difference now is that you approach these fears with awareness and choice. You recognize them as part of the human experience and choose to act in. Alignment with your heart rather than your armor. Practical steps for living with an open, braver heart begin with small daily actions. You might intentionally reach out to someone you care about and express appreciation, gratitude, or concern. You might acknowledge a feeling you have been avoiding and allow yourself to sit with it without judgment. You might engage in a conversation that challenges you to speak your truth with kindness and clarity. These moments, while seemingly simple, are profound acts of courage. They train your heart to operate in openness rather than fear and create a feedback loop of trust, resilience, and presence. As you continue on this path, you will notice a transformation not only in how you relate to others, but in how you relate to life itself. You may find joy in unexpected places, gratitude in ordinary moments, and peace in experiences that once caused anxiety or tension. You learn to navigate challenges with clarity and equanimity, knowing that your value is not determined by external circumstances or past wounds. You begin to understand that life's richness comes not from perfection or control, but from the willingness to engage fully, to feel deeply, and to act courageously in alignment with your truth. Living with an open heart also allows you to embrace imperfection, both in yourself and in the world around you. You recognize that mistakes, failures, and setbacks are not signs of inadequacy, but opportunities for growth, reflection, and resilience. You accept that life is complex, unpredictable, and sometimes painful, and you allow yourself to move through it with presence, curiosity, and grace. In doing so, you cultivate a profound sense of freedom, the freedom to be yourself fully, without apology, without fear, and without the weight of unnecessary protection. Healing is learning you don't need armor to be worthy. This truth encapsulates the essence of living with an open heart. You do not abandon the lessons of your past, you integrate them into a life that is intentional, courageous, and expansive. You recognize the strength in softness, the power in authenticity, and the resilience in vulnerability. You move through the world with a heart that is awake, alive, and willing to engage, knowing that the richness of life is found not behind walls, but in the openness of connection, empathy, and presence. Ultimately, living with an open, braver heart is a choice you make every day. It is a series of decisions to lean in, to speak truth, to honor your feelings, and to act in alignment with your values. Each choice strengthens your capacity for love, empathy, and resilience. Each moment of presence teaches you that safety, worthiness, and connection are not earned through armor or self-protection, but through courage, awareness, and the willingness to be fully human. In embracing this path, you step into a life that is richer, fuller, and more deeply connected than you ever imagined possible.